Welcome back, friends, to another video. I talk with a lot of young people, especially with being on YouTube. I talk with a lot of viewers, especially millennials, and I get this sense that there's a lot of frustration out there about their economic situation. Well, I am going to be honest with you today. Millennials are screwed, and we're going to talk about why in this video. Why are millennials so frustrated? It has to do with money. So millennials are feeling this economic squeeze that generations have not felt since the Great Depression. There is no money. The worst part is that the problem has already happened. There's no fixing this. Millennials' lives have been recession after recession after recession. Your whole lives have been barely scraping by, and so today, most millennials have no money. And millennials are so frustrated because they know that other generations have not had the same problem. When you think about your great-grandparents, their lives looked so much different than young people today. They probably had a house. Only one person in the house worked with a good paying job. They had one or two cars. They would go on vacation every once in a while. They could go to college if they wanted. And I don't think people realize this, but college in the 1950s cost about $500 a year. Think about that. Do you know how much college costs today? A lot more than $500 per year. That gives you an idea of the struggle that young people are facing today. You do not have the same choices in life. All these things that your grandparents had are completely out of reach for young people because they cannot afford it. Let's go down the list. Young people cannot find a good paying job. They cannot afford a house. They cannot afford a car. They probably have crushing student loan debt. They cannot afford health care. They cannot afford to go on vacation. They cannot afford to have kids. All these things are causing tremendous frustration for young people when they saw their grandparents get all of these things and they are getting nothing. Granted, millennials have a lot of things that their grandparents did not have. Millennials have computers and cell phones and Facebook. They are constantly entertained when, let's face it, your grandparents were probably bored most of the time. But even though you have all of these amazing things, if the only thing you can afford to do is to sit at home and watch videos, it's going to be demoralizing. Young people do not want to sit at home. They want to go out and build themselves a life just like their grandparents did. But it is so hard when there is no money. So what should young people do? The first thing you should do is acknowledge the harsh reality of your situation. You got really unlucky. You have lived through recession after recession after recession. It feels like you have never had opportunities to build wealth because you have not. And America is currently in another economic slump, and it is not going to get better anytime soon. Unfortunately, you got a lot of bad luck. You are just screwed, and sometimes that happens in life. You were born at a really unlucky time when there is no money and few opportunities to make money. Second, you need to understand long-term business trends. The economy goes through ups and downs that last generations. If you think about the Great Depression, which happened in 1929 to 1933, that was a time in U.S. history when there was also no money. But over time, the U.S. economy grew back and had tremendous success. But here we are again, almost 100 years later, and people are feeling some of the same money struggles. Those people who were born during the Great Depression were also unlucky. But that is life. Sometimes you just get unlucky. You millennials were born during a very tough economic environment. The question is, What are you going to do about it? Third, history repeats itself. A lot of things happened during the Great Depression, including World War II. If you look at what is happening in the world today, it is shocking how closely history is repeating itself. There are some countries out there that are doing really bad things. Let's look at China. China is threatening to invade Taiwan. They have already taken over Hong Kong, and the United States has already sanctioned China for committing genocide against their own people. So China is taking one of their minority groups, called the Uyghurs, putting them onto train boxcars and taking them to concentration camps. Am I the only person seeing how history is repeating itself? So if you are a millennial today, you are stuck in the flow of history, and the trend of history is looking more and more like what happened during the Great Depression. In America, there is a name that we call the generation that lived through the Great Depression. We call them the greatest generation. Why do we do that? It is because the struggles they lived through. It is because the sacrifices they made in order to bring America back to greatness. They did it because they had no other choice. There was nothing else to do but struggle through it. So if you are a millennial, you can sit and feel sorry for yourself, or you can tighten your belt, save some money, and get to work. The economy will swing back around again. Now, you may not be around to partake in the economic recovery, but you can help be the generation to bring us back to success. You can be the next greatest generation. It is also helpful to know some business history. Because as difficult as the Great Depression was, some of the biggest businesses in America today were started during the Great Depression. Just because you were born during a difficult time does not mean you cannot change your luck and make your own destiny. Let me tell you a story. During the Great Depression, there was a couple named O.D. and Ruth McKee, and they lived in a town called Chattanooga, Tennessee. They were incredibly poor. To make ends meet, they started a business selling cakes out of the back of their car for 5 cents each. Eventually, they got enough money to operate a bakery, but they were still so poor that they put up a sheet at the back of the bakery, and that's where they lived. They lived behind the sheet, and during the day, they would work in the bakery. Odie and Ruth had a granddaughter named Debbie, and they named their business Little Debbie. We all know today about the Little Debbie snack cakes. This company today is now worth $1.4 billion. And Little Debbie now works as an executive vice president at the company today. She talks about her grandparents, and this quote shows how amazing these people were. She says, "Grammy talked over and over again about treating all people with dignity and respect, including those that try and hurt you." And of course, Granddad is famous for saying, there is always a better way of doing something, and it is our responsibility to find it. These were good people who survived the Great Depression and built an incredible life out of hard work and taking responsibility. Millennials, I'm telling you this story today because I want to show you that it doesn't matter if you have no money. You can still go out and build the life of your dreams. So go out into the world, do great things, and always stand up for what is right. Now I want to hear from you. If you are a millennial, go ahead and leave a comment in the comment section down below. Let me know what you think. Thank you so much for watching. I'm Zach from Wolves in Finance. Let's go out and make some money.